Perfect. So we'll go ahead and introduce our speaker today. We have a wonderful speaker, Breanna Naegeli. She is currently the Associate Dean of the Honors College and Global Studies programs at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. She's also the co-founder and consultant in Mind Champs Performance Consulting Group. She has been with the Grand Canyon University for over 10 years. She's also developed and implemented various professional and leadership development programs, and she's also managed over 60 international global studies partnerships worldwide. So please welcome our speaker today, Breanna.
Thank you so much, Faustine. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be here, and I'm so excited to share some information with you guys. As she mentioned, my name is Breanna Naegeli, and today I'm kind of representing my sports psychology consultant side. I have a lot of different roles and wear quite a few different hats with a few different companies, but one thing that I'm really passionate about is sports psychology consulting. And a lot of times people look at sports psychology and say, well, don't you just work with athletes, or do you just work with teams? And the answer is yes. I do work with athletes, teams, coaches, sports administrators, but there's a lot of similarities into how those teams and leaders operate, in addition to what we see in the industrial and organizational world. So a lot of what I'm presenting here today, hopefully is information that you can work and apply towards your personal life, or even teams that you lead, groups and organizations that you lead, and hopefully can find some way to apply this to your life. So today is Wellness Wednesday at the Better Business Bureau. And so, like I said, this is really just a general approach into mindset. How do we shift our mindset, and how do we really maximize performance and increase mental focus and concentration? What I'm really doing today here is sharing 7 best practices. And as I go through this, you might look at some of it and say, well, that's kind of common sense, or I've heard that before. But really going through this, I'm hoping it just shows as a good reminder of things to get back to in case we strayed. I know with the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic has greatly impacted every single one of us in many different ways. We're all trying to adjust to the new normal. We're all trying to cope with our world just being upside down. And so sometimes we get away from our former best practices, or what used to be common practice for us while trying to go through these adjustments. So I'm talking today about mindset, I'm talking about fueling intrinsic motivation, and I'm talking about how to really maximize your performance through some very, very simple reminders, simple techniques. So first, why does mindset matter? I'm going to display a screen. I'm going to give you about 7.5 seconds to look at it, and I want you to share the first thing you notice. So at a quick glance, I'm not going to make you throw this in a chat box, but I want you to just state out loud where you're at. What are some of the first things you notice? Now, if you called out maybe the inaccuracy here, 1 times 9 does not equal 7, or even down here where 9 times 10 does not equal 91, you are part of the large majority who draws to the inaccuracies, right? You are part of the large majority that spots what's wrong. And we've been trained to do that. Not many people are going to look at this and immediately say, well, it is 80% correct. It is better than average, or it is, looking at that glass half full. We are trained to look at the negative. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Understanding the negative, addressing and changing what's not working is how we grow, it's how we evolve, it's how we stay competitive. So just because you might have spotted out and you kind of think to yourself, how many fell into that category, you immediately shout and said, well, 1 times 9 is wrong, like that one's wrong, and then you kind of stop looking at everything else. That's really how we've been trained to think about the world around us from a very young age. If you think of life as a kindergartner, a high schooler going into college, in that educational setting, you're used to teachers scribbling on your paper with red ink. They're marking everything that's wrong, things that need to get corrected, things that need to get fixed. You think of bosses, supervisors, coaches, even mentors in your life. They're more likely to point out things that you need to improve on before they sit and commend you and give you an enormous amount of accolades for things that are going right or going well in your life. And so we tend to get in that habit of looking for the negative. Look what needs to get fixed. Look what needs to get changed sooner rather than later. So my tip number 1 is to shift your lens, right? This takes active participation to really recondition your mind and to start to scan the world for the positive as opposed to the negative. And we call this thought control. A lot of times when stressors come up and change comes up, it's so easy to think about what's not going well, what's not working, what's not right. In addition to that, it gets really easy to get emotion focused, right? Think of the last big change that you had to deal with because of this COVID-19 situation. What was the last big disruption you had to go through? Is it easier to think about how that makes you feel and you drown yourself in the stress, the threat of it all, the consumingness of it all, everything that you need to do to work through? Or are you going to stay solution focused, which means, okay, it is what it is. Here's what I can control. Here's what I'm going to do to work through this. When stressors hit, we often tend to get, one, a little negative, two, emotion focused, and that keeps us from making any kind of forward progress. So one thing I challenge you from this point forward is to really be mindful of the lens in which you're perceiving your stress. You know, is stress a threat to your overall success, or is it an opportunity? Is it a challenge that you know you can conquer? So shift the lens, recondition your mind to start to scan the world for the positive as opposed to the negative. Research has showed us that when we are thinking in a positive state of mind, we are more than 30% productive, more creative, and more spot on as far as accuracy is concerned. There is evidence that shows that positive mindset really does have an impact on our overall performance. So when you start to feel yourself swing maybe a little more towards the negative or the emotion of it all or fixated on the stress, try and reframe that. Be intentional with reframing that so you can conquer. Now, for the next tip, we're really kind of talking about gratitude and operating from your why. One of my favorite quotes is, you don't have to do anything, you get to. And so when you start to realize, like, yes, there are things not going right, there are things not going well, things I wish would be going better, sometimes you have to take a step back and have a little bit of gratitude. You don't have to do any of these things. You get to, you have these opportunities. And especially in times like this, it's hard to remember to be grateful for what we do have and what is going for us. And this brings me to number 2, which is really operating from your why. Like I said, you don't have to do anything, you get to. So why are you putting in that effort and that energy? Is it really where you want to be? And when you start with your why, you can start to cultivate that for levels even deeper. Your why, your how, your what. I like to talk a lot with clients about acting with purpose and intention. I'm probably one of the only sports psychology consultants that isn't huge and raving about goal setting every single day, because a goal without an action, without intention, gets you nowhere. It's letters on a piece of paper. So for me, it's all about setting intention. What will you do? What can you do? What will you accomplish? And so those are mindset shifts that we start to make. It's understanding your why. Why are you doing this? If you really don't want to be in that situation, how can you change it? Because you're the only one who has the ability to do that. Stay focused on the process and not just the outcome, right? A lot of times we are in an instant gratification world. We want to see income, we want to see results, we want to see productivity, and we want to see it today. We don't always have the patience to wait 30, 60, 90 days, or even a year. We're all going through an abundance of change right now. So have that little bit of patience. It's not just the field goal, it's the journey that gets you down the field. So keep that in mind. Find a way to celebrate the small victories along the way. Absolutely learn to enjoy the process and make sure it's not just about hitting that final benchmark, but it's about working and what you're learning along the way. Now, as advertised, I'm going to talk a little bit real quick just about fueling intrinsic motivation. And this really means that motivation that is from within. You know, how do we really fuel that? Because it's not like a light switch. You can't just flip it on and off. You know, it's not a fire that starts on its own. It's something that has to be cultivated. And so whether it's for you personally or whether you're managing a team or department, here's 3 key concepts that you need to keep in mind when working with other people. When we say fueling intrinsic motivation, there's 3 things that build that. One is a sense of autonomy. Whether you feel that you like control or that leadership responsibility or not, everybody appreciates a sense of control, a little bit of freedom, a little bit of room for creativity, and a little bit of room to just spread the wings a little bit, right? Not many people thrive under being micromanaged or being under a microscope or constantly getting checked on. They like to know that there's a sense of trust and camaraderie there. They like to know that there is that sense of freedom where they can really put in where they feel their strengths are. The second is competence. which is really just knowledge. People thrive when they feel like they are experts in their field. They have the resources and tools to be successful. They are set up for success. No one's trying to trick them, but they really have the tools and what it takes to be successful in their role and within their team. And the last one is relatedness or a sense of belonging. We all hate that phrase, I'm really disappointed in you, right? But it stings a little bit more when it comes from someone you really care about, whether it's a spouse, a good friend, a family member, a sibling. When it's someone you have a strong relationship with, that feeling of letting someone down is so much stronger. When it comes to a complete stranger or a coworker you don't really care too much about, or a manager who's never really been an advocate for you, who's never really been in your corner, then you don't really care if you let them down because you don't have that relationship and you feel like you don't owe them anything. This is where when you start to look at different teams across different organizations, there's always some managers and directors who have a better employee retention rate than others. I'm not saying it's 100% based on relatability and building relationships with your staff, but that is a huge component of it. When your team feels like you are there for them, you care about them, it's more than just the job they've been hired to do, you will be amazed at how just intrinsically motivated they grow to become to be able to accomplish tasks throughout their day. So when you look at all things, whether it's, like I said, individually or something that you're doing with a team or a department, you want to find ways to integrate all three of these components, right? Building a sense of, relationship and trust with your employees, giving them a little bit of a say in how they're going to contribute to the team, how they're going to contribute to the organization, and giving them that opportunity to thrive. You might not use and incorporate all of their ideas, but at least they feel like a valued member of the team and not just a workhorse that's producing results to get things done. But let them have that little bit of a voice. And then that product knowledge, where a lot of people get really deflated is they just feel like they don't have the tools necessary to be successful, like they were set up without having the resources to train them to be effective in their role. So these three things all together really create that triangle of intrinsic motivation. So think about how you might be able to apply that model either in your personal life or within your company. So now kind of jumping back into those resources I was talking about, number 3, control the controllables. Absolutely one of my favorite things to talk about with athletes, because how many times are we getting extremely upset and frustrated with things 100% outside of our control? And although I say it's an athlete thing, it's an everybody thing, especially with COVID-19 right now. Think of all the times you've been really frustrated, you've been stressed, you've just been flustered, not knowing what's going to happen next. Sometimes you have to stop and list those things out, put those thoughts onto paper, and then really go through. What do you 100% have the chance to control? What might you have the chance to influence if you play your cards right? But then what is completely outside of your control? And at the end of the day, our attitude, behavior, actions, effort, response, our mindset, our energy, that is within our control. And adjusting and controlling for other people's behaviors and other people's attitudes, I can't force anyone to be intrinsically motivated, but I can try and influence that by how I interact and how I engage with them and how I cultivate the environment, right? So it's really staying in control, especially when things are so uncertain as they are right now. What can you control? What can you not? The sooner you can release the energy and tension away from things 100% outside of your control, you will be amazed what you find the time to accomplish. All you need to know is that when a mistake is made, when a bad decision is made, a business decision gone wrong, things don't go as expected, you got to find a way to let it go, because you can't change the past, but you can make the decision right now to control the controllables and make the next best decision for you, the team, the company. Number 4, another one of my favorites, be where your feet are. Initially, this was something I learned in the athletic setting, and it had a very literal meaning. Be where your feet are, stay balanced, and stay in control. But this eventually evolved into more of a metaphorical meaning, which means stay mentally present. We live in a fast-paced, hyperactive world where we are constantly trying to multitask. And newsflash here, it is literally impossible to multitask effectively. There are some people who will argue to my deathbed with me on that, but your brain can only attend to one cognitive stimulus at a time. It's really just going back and forth at micro millisecond speeds to try and balance everything you have on your plate. If you want to maximize productivity and you want to be effective, you have to find a way to stay mentally present with where you're at. So if you're at work, you're doing your job, that is 100% where your focus is. If you are at home with the family and the kids, you are focusing on those relationships and what you need to accomplish at home. If you're having lunch with a friend, you're not checking your phone and checking your work emails, but you're staying attentive to those relationships. Really, when we talk about being present, it's making sure literally wherever your feet are, that's where your focus and your energy needs to be. And all those other distractions, you need to find a way to mitigate those and put them on the back burner. And we're going to talk about time management in a second, but that is really the way to make sure you can stay mentally present without feeling overwhelmed or distracted by other responsibilities. Now, if you're trying to figure out how to get yourself to snap out of it and literally be where your feet are, we want you to recall your 5 senses. Sometimes it takes sitting in a quiet place, taking those deep breaths, closing your eyes, and staying in tune with all your 5 senses. What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you feel? As you go through those, it really helps you start to take a deep breath, eradicate some of those distractions and the internal noise going on in our brain, and focusing on where we physically are and what we need to do right now. So one of my favorite phrases, I keep this with me all the time, is be where your feet are. The busier we get, the more we're trying to blend all of our different environments in one. It's really making sure we compartmentalize. What are we focused on right now? What do I need to get done? And how do I stay productive while not feeling like I'm trying to tackle 7 things at once? And I mentioned this previously, but is stress an opportunity or a threat to your overall success? We talk about increasing our threshold for stress. Now, number 5 is it's not what you can't do, it's what you can. Now, I love this image and the quote that I just mentioned. It's really about changing your perception on stress. Is stress a threat? Is it a threat to your overall success, or is it an opportunity for growth? Is it a challenge to help you grow? No one ever exceeded and conquered all because everything in their path was easy. The more you conquer small challenges and smaller stressors, the more you increase that threshold for stress in your life. As soon as you get through just big hurdles, so especially with, like I said, the COVID-19 situation, as you are overcoming one big hurdle after the next, when you approach it as, I know tomorrow's going to come, I know I'm going to get through this, I know I can handle this, and you conquer it, on the other side of it, you can sit back and realize you just increased your threshold for stress. You've increased what you could possibly handle in any given day, any given week. And it helps build your self-confidence, your feeling of self-efficacy when it comes to approaching that next big challenge in life. And the better we get at this, the more we grow, the more we can accomplish. So I like to focus on, it's not what you can't do, it's what you can. We talk about strengths-based leadership, right? We talk about really knowing what your strengths are, reflecting on that, and using that to your advantage. Some of my all-time favorite quotes are right here. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And that is absolutely true. As soon as you start making excuses, as soon as you say, but, you've already committed to the excuse, you've committed to a failure, you've committed to not doing what you could be capable of doing. So whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. My next favorite quote, you can believe in you, your purpose, or your excuses, but there's no room for both. Once again, there's so many people who set out, here's what I can do, here's what I can accomplish, here's how I'm going to tackle this. But, I do have X, Y, Z in my way, or I do have this coming up, which might be a little bit of a challenge. Yes, we need to be realistic. But if you're going to spend more time building up your excuses and creating that pipeline of, your scapegoat, then you really never gave yourself a fair chance to begin with. So you can believe in you and what you're trying to accomplish or excuses, but there's no room for both. We talk about positive self-talk, that lens in which you're perceiving this stress. When you go into things with that growth mindset, that this is a challenge, I know I can overcome it, let's do this, you'll be amazed what it is you can accomplish despite the circumstances. Number 6, we'll talk self-reflection. So reflect in the good, reflect in the bad. When I'm working with athletes, a lot of times I say, okay, let's visualize some of your best performances, and they completely understand it. Of course, everybody loves living in their highlights. They love living in the best moments. It helps build self-confidence. It helps build self-worth, and it really helps you feel like you can do that again. And then I say, okay, let's reflect on some of the worst experiences you've had, some of your worst performances. And they say, oh, no, I blocked that out. I buried that deep down, and I really don't want to visit that again. Sometimes we have to take a moment to really investigate those rough moments in our life, the rough patches, the difficult moments that we've had to overcome. And it serves a couple different purposes. One, like I said, it's going to increase that threshold for stress. You're going to realize that you've done it before and you can do it again, that you've gone through tough times before and you have come out on the other side. And so that in itself builds a sense of self-confidence too. And two, when we talk about reflecting on the bad, some of the best people grow by investigating their mistakes. Those mistakes exist for a reason. That's how we grow. That's how we improve. So you could shut the door and pretend it never happened and never relive that moment, or you can investigate it. You can get down into the nitty-gritty and figure out, what do I need to do to make sure that either doesn't happen again, or I improve the next time I have to make that decision. So when it comes to self-reflection, it's the good and it's the bad. One of my favorite quotes, tough times never last, but tough people do. So anytime you think, you have one bad experience coming, one after another, there could be good in that. It could be lessons learned. It could be things that help strengthen you for the future. And then 7, we're talking time management. So when I talk about be where your feet are, the only way that's mentally and comfortably possible is if you have impeccable time management skills. Time is the ultimate equalizer. And I love that statement, because everyone thinks that they're really busy, and most people really are. But at the end of the day, we're all getting 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. We are all given the same clock to work with on a daily and a weekly basis. The difference is, how are you spending your time? How are you prioritizing sleep and recovery? We know that that has an impact on memory, stress, energy, and focus. So how are you prioritizing that? How many hours are you working in the week, in the month? And how are you balancing your time? What most people have never done is actually write out on a chart 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week, and looked at visually how they're spending their time between sleep, daily habits, driving in their commute, the work, school, whatever else might be going on their plate. They haven't actually listed it out. And so the people who think that they are just beyond busy with not a single moment to spare, they're either one, completely accurate in that statement, and they need to learn to either ask for help or to better delegate those responsibilities to bring back a balance in their life. Or two, they will realize by charting their daily responsibilities that they have a lot of wasted time, that maybe they're trying to multitask 4 things at once, and it's taking them much longer to get something done than if they were to just do one task after the next, and stay focused. So when we talk about time management, the better your time management skills, the easier it is for you to stay mentally present where you are when you need to be there. Because now you're not thinking about the 800 things on your to-do list when you're in this meeting or in this appointment. You're focused on that appointment. And now I can maximize my memory, my attention, my productivity in that meeting, and not worry about all these things, because I know I have time built into my day, into my week, to get those things done at a later time. So those things really go hand in hand. Like I said, one thing that everybody, I'm sure, has on their list of things to work on is learning when to say no, when to say I don't have time right now, and maybe I need to prioritize it later down the road. How to delegate. One of the most difficult leadership techniques to train and build is how to effectively delegate and trust others to pull their weight for you. And then when to ask for help. So even if it's at home with the kids, making dinner, bath time, whatever the case is, knowing when to ask for help so that you can create that balance. So as a recap, we're talking about building grit, building intrinsic motivation, and just some quick and simple steps to help you kind of regain balance in your life, especially during uneasy times. 1, shift your lens. Stand for the positive as opposed to the negative. 2, operate from your why. If you're frustrated, you don't get why you have to do something. Well, why are you doing that something? You don't have to do anything. You get to. So is this something you want to do? If it's not, how do you change that? Control the controllables. We're looking at your attitude, effort, behavior, your energy, your thought process. Control what you can, let go what you can't, and know you always have the right to make the next best decision. Be where your feet are, stay mentally present wherever you're at, whether it's in a meeting, at home, with family, with friends. Make sure you are being mentally present. Maximize your mental energy in each of those moments so that you can, really manage your time effectively elsewhere. It's not what you can do, it's what you can. So stay focused on the positive, what you can get done, what you can accomplish, and what you can't, let go of that, because you can believe in your purpose and your goal or your excuses, but you can't believe in both. And then self-reflection, make sure you're reflecting on the good and the bad. Reflecting on the bad still gives you phenomenal learning opportunities, areas for growth, and it really helps you thrive and succeed in the future. And then time management. Time is the ultimate equalizer. It is what we work with. Everyone's working with this same time frame. So no matter what's on your plate between family and business and companies and friends and relationships, we're all working on the same clock. And so how are you going to maximize your daily schedule so that you can be as efficient as possible while still having a sense of balance? I mentioned this quote before, but this is one of my final quotes that I'll wrap up on. Tough times never last, but tough people do. So when we talk about COVID-19, we talk about what we're all experiencing right now. Do know that this is a very short chapter in a very big book. There's going to come a moment where this window, this period of our life is going to feel like it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's going to be a time where things are relatively back to normal or to a new normal that we've all adapted to. This isn't a forever or a permanent situation. And so when we look at it at the lens of this is a temporary hurdle, this is something that we know we can attack and get through together, we're in this together, then you start to attack things a little more solution focused as opposed to emotion focused, and you'll be amazed how much you grow on the other side of this. I want to thank you guys for your time today. It was a pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm going to turn it back over to Faustine, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer whatever you guys might have.
Yes, thank you so much, Breanna. So we have a comment and question from Luke asking for a friend. If someone is super distracted and overwhelmed by the amount of ideas, how do you distill the best ideas plus action items?
Luke, asking for a friend. I love it. When it comes to someone who just has an abundance of ideas, and I think, Luke, you might be onto this already, or your friends might be, journaling is huge, right? Being able to write down those ideas and get them into one location, but not just writing down those ideas, dedicating time in your week, in your month, in whatever season, to really go back and reflect on those and do one of two things. Move an idea forward, operationalize, and learn how to execute. What do you need to make that idea execute? Or get the idea off the table for whatever reason. But when you start to accumulate a bunch of ideas in one place and then just don't do anything with them, it's as good as the handwriting on the paper. It doesn't accomplish anything, but if those ideas have intention and a plan behind it, that's when you start to see, your good ideas move forward, and maybe the ones that aren't as productive right now, we can kind of hang on to those for a later time.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Rachel. She asks, as a leader, do you recommend having positive self-talks and growth mindset sessions with team members? And if so, when and how often should they have them?
So I am absolutely a huge proponent of positive self-talk, growth mindset. And as much as you can do it in a group setting, like sometimes doing a group seminar, maybe once a quarter, is helpful. But when you look at this, I feel like it really is individualized. Some people are naturally more positive and optimistic than others. Some people are going to take it more seriously than others. But when you meet with your team one-on-one, if that's feasible, if that makes sense, maybe it's part of your regular one-on-one discussions, I would strongly encourage to use that time to meet them where they're at, because one, it's going to build the relationship that you have, which helps fuel that intrinsic motivation, but they each might need a different strategy to help reshape mindset. So it might be talking with your employee saying, What are a couple things you might feel you're struggling with? And what you help coach them to do is to reframe how they're approaching that situation, what they might be doing to overcome that, and how they can use their strengths, because you're going to know their strengths, to get through something like that. So you start to train them individually. Or it could be something as quick as, hey, at the end of every day before you clock out, send me the 2 best parts of your day, whether it had anything to do with your job description or not. What are 2 amazing things that happened today that you're excited about? Training people to scan for the positive on a daily basis is huge. Research has actually shown that people who record and journal 3 positive memories each day before they go to bed for 21 days or longer really start to make a significant transition in how they scan stress and the world around them.
Great, thank you. We also have a question asking some of your favorite books and YouTube channels.
So favorite books, Strengths-Based Leadership, uh, The Mind of a Champion, and the author's names are completely slipping me at this point, but The Mind of a Champion is one that's a little more sports psychology based, but I love reading the sports psychology books because although they talk about it from an athlete perspective, as an employee, as a team member in other avenues, as working in higher education, there's so much of it that is applicable exactly where I'm at. So that's another favorite. And there's one, it's like 7 Habits of a Successful Leader. That title might be slightly off, but I'm in the middle of it right now and I love it. And unfortunately, I'm not on YouTube as frequently. I'm more of the old school book person, so I don't have any YouTube channels.
Awesome. So we also have a question from Cynthia. She asks, well, first of all, she loves this very much, so thank you for sharing this
Thank
information.
you.
She's asking for tips on retraining the negative thoughts. If she has any negative thoughts, how to train that thought into a positive quickly.
So I do this work a lot with athletes. And there's a journaling technique that you can do to help you start to identify when the negative thoughts start to creep in. So I think of it like a traffic light. And think of yourself in any given moment when stressors arrive. You're green light, you're cruising, things are fine, you're going well, you're throttling down on the gas, and you're making good progress. Yellow, you're starting to get a little out of control and you have to make a split-second decision. Are you going to pump the brakes and slow down and collect yourself, or are you going to throttle down and hope everything's okay? And then you have the red light where you're stopped, and in this scenario, you're out of control. Like, you're not moving forward and you're being counterproductive. And so one thing I would strongly encourage you to do if negative self-talk is something that you experience is, what are you like in your green, yellow, and red moments? What is your self-talk? What is your body posture, your facial expressions? What is your attitude and your energy? And really chart what those differences look like. And when you self-reflect and you start to realize, here's a stressor, here's a trigger, here's something that's going to push me into that negative self-talk mode, that's when you can start with some interventions or redirecting behaviors. Now, it could be something as simple as a redirection technique. So when you start to feel yourself get negative or a little pessimistic, you kind of give yourself that keyword. So it's a short word or a phrase, something that'll kind of help you snap out of it, and you only use it when you're trying to redirect your attention. And you'll have to figure out what that keyword is for you. You say that keyword, you take a deep breath, and then you need to do a physical habit of sort. For some, it's like adjusting their waistband, it's maybe tying a shoelace, but something physical that gets them to tap into their senses, take a deep breath. And that keyword kind of helps you snap out of it and helps you realize, like, I have a choice to make. I can go down this negative path, or I can redirect right now. And you really have to kind of hold yourself accountable to that. There's some people, so as athletes, one thing that they do is they will literally put a rubber band around their wrist, and anytime they feel themselves getting negative and just trashing themselves mentally, they'll snap the rubber band as a way to condition the thought that, okay, this is not helping me, like, this isn't good for anyone. And that's more of like a physical way to make sure you're bringing attention quickly to negative thoughts if they are really persistent and you haven't had much luck with redirecting those.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. We'll give it another minute. But thank you so much, Breanna, for taking time out of your busy day to educate us with this topic. Definitely beneficial for all of us going through this right now. As we're coming out of it, I know that Arizona is being lifted on our stay-at-home work order. There's other challenges that we'll definitely have to be facing as well as we enter back into our workforces. Um, Looks like we don't have any other questions, but thank you so much. Thank you everyone for
Thank you.
attending. Remember, this webinar was recorded, so if you do need to review the information, it's definitely wonderful information that we can recap with our team members as well. Please visit events.bbcommunity.org. Please stay safe out there and have a great day.